All right, guys, welcome back. We're going to get into some low bar back squats today and high bar. It's my boy Walt. Say hi, Walt.
What's up, everybody? Good morning.
Walt's just warming up a little bit. We're doing some body weight squats, and these are important because first thing we're going to do is get our eye position set. Just keep on moving there, Walt. Show them your movement. So he's been warming up for a little bit. We're not going to get into that. We've covered that extensively. He's going to go down into the bottom of this squat. So everybody's always talking about eye position, really head position. You hear everybody say, look up, look down, look this way. It's a little too general. To be specific about head position, when he goes down to the bottom here, what we're looking for is that his head is in a perfectly natural, neutral position. There's no tension back here on the neck. If he's looking up excessively, or if he's looking down excessively, this is creating issues in the upper back, all right? We want none of that. So as he sits down in that hole, this is where he's going to be at the bottom of the squat position. We want his head neutral, and what he's going to do is just look naturally straight at whatever he is looking at. What are you looking at, Walt?
Right there in front of
About 45 degrees, right? So keep your eye on that spot and stand straight back up. All right, now keep squatting. Do a couple more. So that's basically what he's going to do. Now, when he gets into the walkout, that we'll talk about in a second, his eyes are going to be more further down because his concentration are on his feet as he steps out of the rack. Once he does that, he's going to set his eyes up a little bit further at the angle in which he's established at the bottom of that squat. So let's step under that rack, Walt. So we got our eye position. We know where our head's going to be at the bottom. Next thing we got to do is get our rack height set. Now this bar is going to be sitting on the spine of the scapula, about right here at the top of his chest, about where the pec minor is. So what he's going to do is walk forward and kind of get that bar set up. We want to be at about a 10-degree angle. We want just a couple of inches. So when you stand up with this bar, all we're going to do is extend our hip, clear the rack, just enough to step out. No more, no less. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is hand position. We need to get these hands as close as possible because as he sets this guy up, we're going to create a shelf in his back. And the tighter we get those muscles, the better the bar placement is going to be. But this is also predicated on how much stretch he has here. And Walt doesn't have a lot. He has these massive pecs right here.
Nothing there.
There's nothing there.
No looks for you.
They're massive. So this is a flexibility issue. When people start low bar back squatting, the biggest issue I know for Walt was getting the bar into position and getting enough stretch in your chest that you were able to hold that bar back there. It took a couple of weeks to feel that, and that's pretty common, guys.
Say shoulder stability.
Yeah, every time getting out of there. Yeah. So it may take some warm-up, some stretching. We've covered all that. Go back and watch it. So he's got his hand position. That's about as close as he can get it together. Now the next thing he's going to do is he's going to stand back a little bit and stare at the center of that bar. When he comes under this bar, we have to be absolutely uber conscious of where this bar is going to be on his shoulders. If he ends up with the center of this bar off to one side by 1 inch, what does that mean? Mechanical guy, smart guy, math guy. What's the matter? It's 5:30 Saturday morning. Are you not awake?
You're going to collapse under the bar.
It's going to go that way. We're going that way or this way. Right. We want this bar perfectly centered right on top of the spine of the scapula.
I don't know how I got the math guy. That's what I'm still trying to figure out.
You're a millennial, dude. You're all math guys.
We're not all the same.
I bet if I gave you my phone, you'd figure out some way to figure out a new and different way of doing this with it, wouldn't you? Stare at the center of that bar. And he's going to lay his head right on top of it. Now, he's going to dip his knees and come right under. So he should be situated. Now, if I were standing behind him, spotting him, I'd maneuver him ever so slightly and just make sure he's perfectly centered. Now, right now, what he's going to do is he's going to dig that bar into the spine of the scapula. He's going to tighten his traps, his rhomboids, and pull everything together. The tighter you get your upper back, the lighter the weight is going to feel when you step out of this rack. If your hands are apart and your upper back is loose and you don't have that T-spine extension and you step out, it is immediately going to be felt in the lower spine. It's going to be hanging on you. The tighter you get, the bigger you get, the lighter the weight is going to feel, the better the mechanics will be in the squat. So he's set, he's ready to go. Next thing he's going to do, bring your feet a little further under the bar. So when he stands up with this bar, he's already got the bar basically over the center of the foot. We want to use as little muscle exertion as possible as we stand up and start to walk out. Don't go yet. He's ready to roll. So what we want to do is just bring our hip into extension, right? But we're not going to get there yet. There's one step. He's going to take a big breath. He's going to tighten up. Now, if we had a belt, which we don't have today, because we're not going to get into that, if he had a belt, he would be breathing in and then trying to fill out against the belt. It's a different kind of brace than without. It is a pushing into the belt that he wants to brace. Because he doesn't have one, it's different. What we want to do is to flex, squeeze the abs, and then try to fill ourselves 360. So he's pushing into the obliques. As soon as he tightens those abs, those erectors are going to tighten. He wants to be conscious here. He's going to take a big inhale, squeeze, extend the hip, feel the weight. Now from here, his feet are going to be roughly wherever his squat stance is going to be, a little to the inside. So if his squat stance were wider, go ahead and spread your feet apart. He's going to be roughly a little wider when he stands up. Go back to yours. Okay? So he knows when he steps back, all he's got to do is take one step, a little to the outside, and another step. It's a two-step phase. People talk about a four-step, three-step. We're going to do it in two. And all he does is set up his squat stance directly into the bar, a little to the inside. So when he steps out, go 1, 2. He is where he needs to be. And if he's not, from here, he can just kind of screw his feet open and get a little bit wider into it, okay? So from here, he's about ready to go. He's going to exhale, blow it all out, find his eye position. Now in powerlifting, there's a judge in front of you. You're going to look up, you're going to look right back down at the floor. He's going to take a big deep inhale, brace one more time. His first movement is going to be screw his feet into the ground. He's going to get those abductors and the glutes turned on, and then he's going to hip hinge. And right there, he's going to start running into the distance that he can hinge. That's as far as he can press that hip back without beginning to flex at the knee. Once he gets that, he's going to flex forward at the knee and start to abduct. And sit. Come back up. Let's bring your feet wider, Walt. Okay? So one more time. He's going to step back. Good. Come back up out of that. First step. He's going to breathe in every time. Brace, tighten, hip hinge. Then the knees are going to flex forward and abduct, just like we covered in the bodyweight squat. He's going through the same sequence every time. Brace, screw the feet in, shift into the hip hinge. Knees are going to flex forward and out. Go to the hip hinge. Stop right there. If you notice, the bar is still over the center of the foot. Classic mistakes we see is everybody's trying to load the hamstring these days. Back in the 80s, we were taught to keep the shins vertical and to sit completely back. And this is what we're still seeing, people trying to turn on this hamstring back here. Go ahead and stand back up. This is a stabilizer muscle. It's very important, right? But this is not a primary muscle. The quads and glutes are in the squat. So for us, what we want to do, now let me back up. If I had a powerlifting suit on that stabilized me and I were able to just completely hinge back against it and that suit pulls me back up, that's great. But when we're talking about raw squatting, he's got no suit on, he's got nothing to stabilize his body, we've got to get into knee flexion and abduction. You doing all right in there, Walt?
Pure sweat.
Pure sweat. Look at it. It's just a bar. He's dripping.
Sweat.
He's dripping. There's that much concentration happening. There's the easy way and there's the right way. And if you're doing it the right way, there is a lot going on here. Look at my boy. Look at that. I love that. So, one more time. We want to focus on a two-phase movement as we're sitting. We want to load the hip hinge. That's as far as that hip, stop, can go. His hamstring is tightened. It's keeping the knee from traveling too far forward, and it's also going to help extend the hip as we come back up, but not to the level of the quadricep or glute, period. For him to keep this bar over the center of the foot, if he were to keep sitting back, what would happen? Keep sitting back and try to do it. What would happen is you would see his back keep flexing forward. And when he comes up out of the hole, he's going to stay flat, and that's going to turn into a good morning squat. And this is the last thing that we want. We want this bar to maintain its position over the center of the foot. And the way we're going to do it is to hip hinge, sit back, sit back, sit back, get real tight, hold that. Once we got that, and we've got the back position we want, and really if we can stay 45 degrees is perfect. He's at about 50, 55 degrees. To maintain that back position, he's going to push that knee forward and abduct it. Now, what's important is as the hip rises, the bar and hip are going to come at the same speed and stand back up. Once again, if he gets down in the hole and we've tried to load nothing but that hamstring, we'll see the butt come up and the back is flat. You are never going to be able to push serious weight like that. The mechanics are terrible. Anybody teaching that doesn't understand what's really happening here in the squat and the mechanics of the muscle firing sequence that need to be involved to keep this bar moving over the center of the foot. Think safety also, guys. The last thing I want to do is to have that bar loaded in this position. As we come up out of that hole, it's absolutely essential that for every inch the hip rises, the bar is rising and stays in the exact same position. Do it again, Walt. Go through the whole thing. Brace, tighten, and he's getting a little excessive at what he's looking at. He's changing his head position. So as coach, I'm going to come in and fix him and cue him. Keep sitting back. Drive up out of the hole. Good. All right. Whole sequence. He's breathing in. He's bracing. Screwing his feet into the ground. He's going to punch that hip back. Take a breath. And let's do 5 in a row and hit a good flow. Now quit trying to bust the sequence apart. He's going to control the weight as it comes down. And once he gets there into this deep stretch reflex, he's going to bounce up out of it. He's going to drive that hip back. Knees come forward. They abduct. Up, out. A couple more. Everybody's going to be relatively different because of femur length, torso length. You hear this conversation a lot. Here's what I'm going to say. This may be true, but what is never okay or appropriate is that the back is exceeding 60 degrees and we end up in this good morning squat. What has to happen is we have to get more mobility in dorsiflexion, my ability to extend my knees forward towards the toe. It should never exceed the toe. The weight is always distributed from the toe to the heel evenly and side to side. And you see Walt's barefoot. We almost always squat barefoot till we start using gear, till we start using belts, ollie shoes. Don't squat in tennis shoes. Wear wrestling shoes or no shoes or ollie shoes, which is a weightlifting shoe. And there's a couple of hybrids that have come out recently that Reebok has done for CrossFit. They're okay, but I would recommend if all you're doing is squatting and maybe some exercises in between activators, take your shoes off and get the feeling of your feet being screwed into the ground. Let's do just a couple more, Walt, and we're going to load some weight. Brace. There he goes again. He just can't wait. Look right there. 45 degrees, okay? Sequence. Brace. Screw your feet into the ground. Hip hinge. Knee flexion and abduction to full extension. One more beautiful squat. Always start with body weight squats. Do your activators. Then do the bar. Then start loading. And that's what we're going to do now. Alright guys, so a couple more points before you get going. One is music selection. If you're squatting, it's absolute necessity that it's OG rock, 80s rock, Guns N' Roses, something you can bang your head to, or some old school hip hop. You cannot squat to any other music. Is that right, Walt?
Right.
A couple other things. If you notice, I've got an abductor band on my knees. I've had a little glute issue going on with the right side. So I did some activators, but as I warm up, I'm gonna go ahead and throw that thing under my knee and get that glute good and hot and help it to remember what its job is, which is to abduct these knees, especially past 90 degrees. Once we're talking about 90 degrees, a lot of people have issue with where below parallel should be. Once the hinge, the crease of my pants at the hip, goes past the top of the knee, I'm basically below parallel, all right? So I want to break 90 degrees. I'm sitting on a Dynamax ball. I know for me, that puts me roughly, probably about 1 inch to 2 inches below parallel. It's a pretty deep squat. But I know if I sit back on that thing and I can drive my hip to it and I'm in good solid position at the bottom, and for me, I want to feel that bar right over the center of my foot below parallel, that's good. Now for you, it might be a plyo box. You can set your rack to an appropriate height and run that bar all the way down to it, and that'll help you also figure out where your safety position needs to be if you need to dump this bar. Last thing I want to mention is, even though I'm looking down across the floor, setting my eye in head position, I'm really paying attention to the peripheralness of where the bar is. So what I'm doing, I'm really feeling where the bar is in space. And I want to feel that bar stay over the center of the foot the entire time. So basically what I'm talking about is, if the extension of my fingers were the extension of the bar, I want to be able to see my fingertips. And I'm going to pay super attention to where those fingers are. I want to notice if they're moving forward or backward. What I'm looking for is that they stay in a relative same position and they come vertically straight down and vertically straight back up. I move my hip, my knee, and my ankle where it needs to go in order to keep that bar in a perfect straight line. Let's load up some weights and squat.